Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next webcam or webinar, I should say, on dementia. And this week we've been looking at the global aspects of dementia. My name's Ian Welsh. I'm taking over for the rest of the module from David Robertshaw, who's on leave, and I'm joined today by Dr. Kerry Petersen from Denmark. And Kerry will be talking to you later because she is a dementia specialist and she'll be sharing her expertise with us. But to summarize the module so far, there's been an increase in dementia, and there is continuing to be an increase in dementia cases worldwide. And Kath Williams, one of the speakers on the video, had pointed out that most care is given by families, and that there's a need for information and training. And as part of the G8 conference, the topics were, the three main topics were the need to improve the quality of life and care of the dementia person, to prevent and delay dementia, and to improve social adaptations. So we'll be discussing some of these issues later on. We also saw a very moving talk by Dr. Peter Dunlop, an obstetrician who realized that he was developing dementia as he was a practicing consultant, and he had to effectively take matters into his own hands professionally to take himself off the medical register. But the discussion showed the difficulties that a person with dementia actually has, because he had difficulty reading his own notes and he was demonstrating forgetfulness. So it was a very, very moving talk, and it brings into context, I suppose, or into perspective, that although dementia is a global problem, it affects the individuals, and we don't have to think about it as a worldwide sort of many millions of people. We have to think about the individuals, the people who are actually experiencing dementia, and these are the people who are the focus of our attention. We also looked at the results of the UK National Dementia Strategy, and that shows a considerable need for improvement, particularly in the fact that over half of carers still report difficulties in gaining a diagnosis. Less than half of carers have been given information on legal issues. Many carers still feel ill-equipped to deal with more agitated behaviours, and this is something that we perhaps need to discuss later. The need for training for care, and 2/3 of carers said they've not received any training on dealing with agitated behaviours, which obviously is going to be very distressing when you're dealing with somebody who is perhaps a close family member and are displaying these very abnormal behaviours, and people do actually need these. So the UK review has shown that we are actually falling behind on this. We're not actually doing as well as we ought to be doing. Although, having said that, there are some good examples of local initiatives. So it's not all doom and gloom, but at least there is a national strategy, and that is something to work towards. A number of people have said, in the discussion forums about the need to update the strategies, and we'll be discussing that later on. But that briefly summarises what we've been discussing. Now, we are very fortunate today to be joined by Dr. Kerry Petersen, who is coming to us from Denmark, but I'll let her explain her background and how she came into dementia, and she's going to discuss some aspects of dementia. So I'll hand over to Kerry now. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Ian. Yeah, so I'm Kerry Petersen, living here in Denmark. How I got started working with older adults and in dementia was from a very young age. The youngest we found recorded was from 1984, so I was 2 years old, And both of my grandparents and my mother were working at the local nursing home in my small hometown. And so I would spend a lot of time at the nursing home after school and on the weekends. And these were some of my first friends that I met. And that continued throughout school, throughout high school. And then I went on to study my master's in gerontology and decided to focus on dementia care. So after that, I took a job working as a private caregiver for one woman with early onset Alzheimer's disease in Dallas, Texas. And that was an amazing, eye-opening experience to see the struggles that the family was going through, but also her personality was wonderful and how she shared what she was going through and her perception on things and the stories that she told. And that pretty much sealed the deal. So I've been working exclusively with dementia since then. After I finished working with her, I moved to Denmark about 10 years ago and finished my PhD on welfare technologies in dementia care last year. And since then, I have been working on different types of welfare technologies in dementia care. This was also part of the studies where we kind of made these smart home solutions and then installed them throughout Europe in four different countries and tested them also on the effects on quality of life and effectiveness for caregiving. And since then, I've also got involved in working with young onset dementia and working on service development and service evaluation. So not all of them are even focused on technology. Last summer, I was working at a great forest house for people with young onset dementia. And it was a cozy little house in the forest, and they came out and they had to do the gardening and paint around the windows and do all the sweeping and vacuuming and feed the horses. And it was just a great activity place for them to be out in nature, to be with people like them. And so that's got me really excited about working on services for young onset dementia. So that's a bit about me and how I got into the field. And it's great to be taking these online courses, and thank you, Ian, and University of Derby for having me here.
Okay, thanks very much, Kerry. Could I ask you to elaborate perhaps a little more on smartphones? You made reference to smartphones. How can we use these?
Smart homes. Sorry, maybe I didn't.
Oh, smart homes. Okay.
Yeah. So we had different sensors throughout the home. GPS sensors that they could use when they left the house, bed sensors that could detect if they'd been sleeping for 8 hours or if they haven't been in bed at all during the night. And it was all very individualized, so based on each single person, we would set the parameters. So if they normally were in bed between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., if something changed, with those hours, then the family members or the professional carers, they would get an alert saying, check in on them. We also had cooker monitors, so the person maybe were in more advanced stages of dementia and they only made tea, so their time for cooking was 10 minutes and then the cooker would automatically shut off. If they were in the more mild stages of dementia and they could cook full meals, we would give them 1 to 2 hours and then the cooker would automatically shut off. Things like this, the medication reminders, easy contact through a touchscreen button to contact the carers and their doctors. Yeah, a whole host of things. It was really exciting.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Now, obviously, that's I'm guessing that that could be quite expensive to set up.
Yeah, yeah, especially for this type of smart home outfitting, because we use I think 14 different services, and it ended up costing somewhere around 3,000 euros per person for all the technology, setting up internet access, buying, the phone that they would need, the equipment, all that kind of stuff. And then it costs the regions, the 4 different regions that we used, about, I don't have it here in front of me, and I don't want to give a false figure, but quite a bit more, and that was more of a one-time use. Let's say above 10,000 euros, but then you would have the system in place, so it would just be maintenance costs that you would have after that.
Okay.
So as opposed to going to a nursing home for 1 year, the costs can easily pay out.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Again, from the perspective of people in the developed world, that might well be a way forward. Um,
Mhm.
because yes, as you point out, the cost benefits of keeping somebody in their own home as opposed to having them in care is quite considerable. So who foots the bill?
Well, for this project, it was funded by the European Commission. So all the participants, the regions, and the individuals, they all got the technology and the services for free, and then they could continue using it after the project ended.
Okay, yeah. So once the system gets going, sort of out of project, if the system is approved by whichever governments, departments, or whatever, then there will be cost implications for somebody, whether it's going to be the family or the state. It's,
At this point, I think it all falls on the families. I haven't heard of any governments that would approve, this large smart home outfitting for people with dementia. But you can get, through Alzheimer's Society or Alzheimer's Association or other groups locally, you can get some funding for welfare technologies, or maybe through, your local doctor. They might know some more information about that.
sure, yeah, but this sounds really interesting for the future. It's obviously it's got very great potential,
Yeah.
but again, only for those that can afford it. And clearly, dementia is a worldwide problem, and people in less developed countries, less affluent countries, are not going to be able to afford this. But that is the unfairness of life, I guess. Um, but yeah, that sounds really good. Um, can we just move on and perhaps talk about support and information that carers need? Do you have any thoughts on this? So we're talking about an individual perhaps who their parent becomes ill with dementia, and then they're going to be, well, at least for as long as possible, cared for at home. What sort of information do they need? What kind of support do they need? And maybe training.
Yeah. Um, I would definitely recommend as much as they could get their hands on, because the challenges that they'll face learning about dementia as they're going through the process is going to be overwhelming for them. Um, so your local Alzheimer's Association, if they offer courses, they usually offer support groups for spouses or children. Um, Definitely try and get hooked up with them if you can. That's maybe a best line of defense, and you'll meet people through that and kind of make your own new social networks and new social supports and learn about other courses or tips and tricks that other people have done that you can try out. Unfortunately, we say that if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. So there's no step-by-step guideline that's going to work for everyone. So they really kind of have to figure out different strategies on their own. If humor works, if bribing with candy works, if going outside and distracting works, you just kind of have to try different strategies, and it may change from day to day or from week to week.
Yes, I agree, and I certainly agree about kind of having to work it out for yourself, through your own experience. Because my mother had vascular dementia, and when she went into a nursing home, that was difficult for us. I mean, it was really heartbreaking for us to take her into a nursing home because she had no idea where she was going, and it comes, we were discussing last week whether or not you should tell lies to people. Is it ethically correct to tell lies? Well, I'm afraid the only way we could get my mum out of home was to tell her that she was going to stay with some nice people for a while. And but once she was there, she never asked to come back. So I guess, although we didn't tell her an outright lie, we adjusted the truth to a certain extent. But then, visiting her in the home, I had to tell my children, who were quite small at the time, that Gran, may not recognise them. And in fact, on one occasion, when we entered the home, they they ran towards her. They saw her in the corridor, and they ran towards her, and they said, "Gran, Gran," and she became very anxious and agitated. She said, "Take these people away, take these people away," and that was distressing to my daughters. We hadn't anticipated that, and I think, although we'd said, that Gran is forgetful and she may not remember things, we hadn't anticipated that kind of response. So we had obviously learned a lesson, but learned it a little bit too late. And I think you're quite right in saying the tips and tricks that you can learn from each other. I think if people have relatives with dementia, it's very well worthwhile talking to other people who've been through or are going through the same experience. Yeah. One of the questions that has been raised by other students on this course in the discussion has been about annual updating of, well, it's been a suggestion rather than questions, annual updating of national strategies. And people are saying that, yeah, it's great to have a national strategy, but it needs to be updated every year. I'm not quite sure in what way they mean updating, but I'm interested to know, well, do you have any ideas on how people on the ground might have any influence on national strategies? Because, government are way up there and the nurses way down here. How can carers, not just nurses, but anybody in the healthcare field and anybody caring for people with dementia, how can you tap into and influence national strategies? Do you think we can?
I think we can. I think it takes a bit of persistence. These national strategies, these are often written by, doctors or academics or people in high-level positions in health and social care. So it's a little harder for a single caregiver or a single nurse to have a strong influence. So a good way to strengthen your voice is to group up with others. So join your local Alzheimer's Association or another network like this that already has connections with the government and is already giving recommendations or opinions on national strategies. And by telling them then what you see on the ground or what you think should be improved, that's a great way to strengthen your voice, because then they're speaking on your behalf.
Yeah, I'd support that about joining organisations, because certainly organisations like the Alzheimer's Disease Society, if you're a layperson, then that is a way in to not only to get information, but to pass your experiences up. For example, how do we know, how does government know that 82% of people, 82% of carers had adverse effects on their work, and they were not able to either to work, or it affected their work significantly, and information like that can only come from the ground. So I think by feeding information through, and I think the trick is really to find a conduit, to find who are the people or who are the organisations that can have the ear of government, that can have the ear of civil servants.
Yeah.
And I know from my own experience working with the Royal College of Nursing some years ago, not working with them, but as a member of the Royal College of Nursing, I joined one of the forums particular to my specialty, and found out that in actual fact the policymakers were asking the Royal College of Nursing, what do you think we need to do? So this is how the nurse on the ground or the carer in the community can actually get the ear of government, I suppose, by working through an established and reputable organisation. So I think that's those are the ways of doing it. It was interesting to see some of the comments that people were making on the discussion board about how they can actually develop their work, especially in areas where there isn't a great deal of development. And I'd just like to refer to a posting from Kikilomo Lanionu Edwards, and I do apologise if I've not pronounced her name correctly, but Kikolomo is a Nigerian lady, and she had said that she'd approached the global Purple Angel organization for assistance. Now, I think that what she has done has been absolutely amazing, because they've appointed her, Purple Angel had appointed her as ambassador for Purple Angel in Nigeria, and so far she's appointed 15 ambassadors,
Wow.
5 of whom are professors, 3 are doctors, and 1 is in the Senate. So,
Wow.
yeah, so I mean, this is a lady who's just done something, to use her own initiative to say, right, well, there's nothing going on here, we need to do something. And so I think, you know, people on the ground don't need to feel disempowered. They need to say, well, you know, what are the pathways? And if there isn't a pathway, can I make one? And God bless her, she's actually gone and done it, you know. So I think, you know, all credit to her for doing that. That's lovely. Yeah. So the discussion boards, they have been, I think, very useful in exchanging, you know, people exchanging ideas and putting forward questions as well. And I'm desperately just sort of shuffling my papers, looking for one of the questions. But yeah, that's right. I found it. Marina Vanica. Again, apologies if I didn't pronounce your name properly, Marina. She asked a number of questions. I'll come back to some of them later, but 2 in particular perhaps we might discuss. Kerry, do you think, she's asking, do you think that the owner of Dementia, an Alzheimer's disease institution, has to know what dementia means, because some owners have no idea of the specific disease? Have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, as far as I know, there's no rule or law that says you must know everything about the company that you're running. So as far as he must know it, there's no way to really enforce that. Should or could, definitely he could know about it, and I would think that he would want to be successful in his business. That he would at least want to know, he or she, what they're working with. So yeah, I would think it's important, and I would be a little surprised to meet someone who didn't know and they were owning a facility for this.
Indeed, yeah. I would think that they ought to have some insight into the condition, but on an operational level, those who are actually running, as opposed to owning an organisation, they really ought to have some insight, and if they don't, they really do need training and education in this field.
There's also quite a few. Oh, sorry.
No, carry on.
Nursing are owned by hotel chains, or at least I remember this when I was living in the U.S. And so if you think of it from this type of business model, their industry is hospitality, and so they may know quite a bit about hospitality, but not necessarily about the conditions of the people who are living in the nursing homes or the care homes. So yeah.
And maybe it would be unfair to expect them to have specific clinical knowledge, but certainly I would say, my suggestion is that the people who are operationalizing the care, the managers of care, and certainly those who are giving care, do need to have knowledge. They do need to have insight into the condition, but perhaps you could forgive the owners themselves for not knowing it. I mean, I do know of one care home not very far from where I live, actually, that is owned and run by a builder, because during a downtime in the building industry, he realized that there was an upsurge in need for care homes, so he built a care home, and so he owns that care home now. But you can't expect a builder to understand the clinical condition of dementia, but I would expect the matron of the nursing home to understand it.
Yeah.
Another question that Marina asked is, if a patient with dementia doesn't want to go outside of his or her room, what do you say to her? So, you know, I suppose the question is one of what is the ethically correct thing to do with somebody who makes a decision which may not be in her own best interest and might not be the decision she would make if she was well. So, do you think we should, or how should we deal with such a situation?
Well, I think one thing you would want to avoid straight off is forcing them to go out and interact. So putting them in the wheelchair, wheeling them out into the day room, and then just leaving them there, assuming they're going to interact with people. I think that's not going to be beneficial and probably cause problems. So a better strategy might be to sit down and talk with this woman and find out more about her, find out what are some things she likes. Maybe she used to garden, so she would enjoy taking a walk out in the gardens. Or maybe she likes the smell of rain, so take her out after rain. Just find little things that that she would enjoy doing, and then try and start incorporating those activities. It doesn't have to be a big half-hour trip out. It can just be a few minutes, but start with things that she likes, and that's where you're probably going to be most successful.
I think that's very helpful advice. Yeah, thanks very much for that, Kerry. So anyway, thank you, Kerry, for telling us, sharing your experience with us, and sharing in this question and answer session. I would like to just refer to two other questions which Marina had raised, which is about, she asked, what would you require if there's comorbidity with dementia and another disorder? Would you advise the family to visit a psychiatrist as well? And secondly, she asked, in case social workers have not enough or no education at all on dementia, would you try to collaborate with them? Now, those questions, I think they're very valid and very good questions. I think they will be best dealt with next week, because in the next module, where the theme is integrating care. So what I'm going to suggest, Marina, if that's okay with you, is that we'll park those questions and we'll come back to them next week, when perhaps we've all had more time to look at the issue of integrating care. So thank you very much for your questions, and thank you everybody for your contributions to the discussion board. And a special thank you to Dr. Kerry Petersen. Thank you very much, Kerry, for your contribution. I really do appreciate it. So thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.